Scott Smith will be speaking next.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. And Nancy Alderman and Stephen Lester, fantastic opening, your statements and everything. And I want to reincorporate everything word by word that you guys said as I present and reveal some data tonight from some testing. And look forward to working with all of you, the two of you and everyone else, and follow up. A little bit of background on me. I've been involved in over 60 contamination events, starting with my own in 2006, that wiped out my life as I knew it and my business and my employees. And I have gone as a passion project into disasters and try to help people not to have to go through what I go through. I have 25 patents where I'm a named inventor on environmental and testing remediation that I've used a lot of data from my on-the-ground field work. I have a great team of experts around me. Some of you have talked to them. I'm the main person in the front to protect their current careers right now, but they have over 150 years of dioxin and related experience, and that includes a toxicologist and a medical expert. My main goal is to get the data using the proper lab procedures. Do not have any grant funding, spent between 90 to 100,000. As everyone knows, our focus has been on dioxins, about $550 a test. And I believe it's complementary to all the other independent testing people here. And the goal here is to take what we find, get it to the community, get it to the residents, get it to the appropriate toxicologists and medical doctors, and let them address the synergistic toxicity, additive toxicity, because in my view, the EPA continues to discredit much of all of our work by citing a singular exposure to a singular chemical. And there's a lot of chemicals here that need to be addressed, and it starts by identifying that. With that being said, I have some short slides I want to go through. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about briefly here in the next few minutes, first of all, preliminary dioxin soil testing results from February 20th to October 12th. I originally set out to come to East Palestine 2 times at the request of residents. Tomorrow, I begin my 22nd trip and 26th round of testing. And there are 30 to 35% of our soil samples are elevated relative to background. Because of the time constraints tonight, I am not getting into the furnace filters and why they matter, but I am coming out to do more testing. And at Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the offices of East Palestine Justice in Columbiana, I'm going to go into a much more thorough, in-depth presentation and take a lot of questions from press and community. So, and also now back to this presentation, recent quotes from Mark Durno and the EPA, courtesy of Joy Marie Mann, in light of these testing results and other independent results. And combined with what Mark Durno says, with Stephen Lester's memo, it is, taken with this data. I encourage everyone to thoroughly look at it. And number 3, I'll close with this, Thomas Edison and why he as an example is relevant, because you can't talk about any of this stuff without being, the reality is there's a false PR narrative coming from Norfolk Southern and the EPA. So here we have, as of October 12th, 45 East Palestine soil samples. Now, and again, I defer to Stephen Lester and all the experts. It is my understanding, it's agreed by the experts, rural background, non-impacted communities where there hasn't been an event like a derailment or some other contamination. 29 of our samples, 64% exceed 3 parts per trillion, and this is the TEQ, toxic equivalency. 31% or 14 samples exceed 6 parts per trillion. 29% or 13 samples greater than 8 parts per trillion. And then this proposed screening level from the Arcadis report that I went through with my team of experts has a proposed screening level of 4.8 parts per trillion relative to the TEQ for dioxins. 38% of our samples are there. So far, we're looking around 30% are areas that we believe need to be followed up and need a lot more expert input and review. And not all, I mean, we have 70% where the soil samples appear to be close to the background. And I want to also say, at the request or permission of residents, these names are being disclosed. And why? I've had a lot of calls that people feel that they're being bullied and threatened. They have health symptoms. They're too scared to come out. And I want to encourage to those people listening that these individuals have given their permission and or their request. Reach out to them. If you're an affected resident and you're being threatened and you feel unsafe, please reach out to these residents. Reach out to Unity Council. They can talk to you anonymously. So you can see these are the soil samples with the residents. And if you take the accepted background residential soil TEQ in parts per trillion, it's 6 parts. It goes all the way up to 1900. So everywhere from 283% of greater than background to almost 32,000%. This is the same information in graphical form. And these are the dioxin TEQ is, we have the Enchanted Salon. Those results just came in, and that's across the street, I think, from the EPA Welcome Center. And so far, that is one of the higher ones with the soil at 59 TEQ. And then these two were on a separate chart. This is Brushville Supply. These are two soil samples taking a month or so apart, right near ground zero, where we have concerns a lot about the dust. So as you can see here, 460 versus 6, 1900 versus 6, again, TEQ parts per trillion. Now, we also look at total dioxins and furans, and we want to make sure we disclose all this data to the toxicologists and medical professionals. So we went to Salem, Ohio, where we know the plume was not, and doing a control, and in parts per trillion, was 1,641 of total dioxins and furans. And you can see the elevated, same ones from the elevated TEQ, the total dioxins and furans go from 3,349 or 104% more all the way up to 604,064, almost 37,000% more. Again, what we are saying, a lot more testing is needed. We're happy to provide this to all the subject matter experts or anybody that wants to work in good faith to help us get to the truth. And here are the total dioxins and furans from Salem, Ohio to Enchanted Salon, graph number 1, and then graph number 2 reflecting the data. So, and then on the recording of EPA Mark Durno, we had it transcribed. And for those of you that haven't listened to it, Joy Marie Mann released this on Friday. Mark Durno has admitted, I will be the first to acknowledge that we have waited way too long to do this assessment of the creeks. I can tell you why, but you don't want to hear that. And Mark Durno admits EPA negotiated with Norfolk Southern on its sampling plan. A lot of respect for Judith Think. And I'd love to hear her weigh in at some point about that. I thought the EPA was in charge in this whole negotiation thing in light of the FOIA lawsuit with the EPA, with the Government Accountability Project, and the EPA refusing to test resident soil. And to put that into context, the EPA has $12 billion budget and 17,000 employees. It would be rather easy. It wouldn't even be a rounding error in their budget to test the requested homes and soil samples. And Mark Durno says indoor air sampling is too complicated. One of the concerns, why aren't you doing indoor testing? Indoor testing is complex, or a whole lot of chemicals in people's homes that have nothing to do with a train derailment. Well, as you know, you don't even need my testing or anybody else's to know. None of these health symptoms were ubiquitous in the environment. Nancy did a great job describing them. I don't need to describe them again, but and that this narrative from the EPA is just not credible, because if these chemicals in your homes were making you sick, these health symptoms would have been ubiquitous in the environment. And again, here's points 4 and 5, make this PowerPoint available to anybody that wants it. And here is on the bullet point 4 is Mark Durno talking about that he does believe health concerns are from early exposures. And if you didn't look at the data, would you think there are still ongoing exposures? Of course, based on what I'm hearing. Again, if you work for the taxpayers and the residents, your narrative on what you say to people in the public should all be the same, I believe. So this is interesting to say the least. And, and the EPA is basing on data. And again, as Stephen Lester pointed out, it's pretty clear that the EPA's data is lacking. And then finally, being the guy out front, I'm used to the PR and the false narratives and what's being said. And here's, Thomas Edison is referred to as a scientist and inventor. And I am not a PhD. However, I have PhDs around me that guide me. And I do have 25 patents as a named inventor. Thomas Edison didn't have a high school degree. He's still the most prolific inventor, and they refer to him as a scientist with over 1,000 patents. I say I only have 25 because I'm overeducated probably. I have an undergraduate degree from Baylor in economics and a Harvard Business School degree. Harvard Business School degree serves me very well because it taught me to deal with some condescending, arrogant people. And from time to time, although 90% of the people I deal with at the EPA are great, I do deal with some condescending arrogance. So the Harvard Business degree serves me well in that regard. So, and I'll end up with saying, when people see about these problems, we need to look at this in a different way. That's why I'm happy to work with all the subject matter experts. And what I always say as the railroad and the EPA and they ramp up all the narratives and the PR attacks, I'm doing everything by the book, by the guidance of the PhDs and the subject matter experts. And if you look at your lights, your smartphone, and your computer, what do they have in common? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison. None of them have PhDs, let alone college degrees. So with that being said, my door remains open to the EPA and the railroad to test side by side. I don't take anything personally. Look forward to working with everybody. Thank you.